You didn't stumble here by accident. Out of the endless sea of content floating across your screen, something in you paused. Something within recognized this moment. Most people will scroll by, dismissing it as coincidence, as nothing more than another video in their feed. But not you. You are here, listening. And that alone tells me something very important. You're ready to remember a truth you've carried all along, the truth that you are not powerless. The truth that you are not a victim of life's currents, but the very consciousness shaping them. For most of our lives, we've been taught to believe that reality is solid, fixed, and beyond our control. We're told that life happens to us, that circumstances dictate our future, that we must endure and survive until something outside finally shifts. But that story is incomplete. Reality is not a heavy stone you're forced to push uphill. It is more like water fluid, responsive, and constantly mirroring the vibration you carry within. Think of it this way: when you look into a mirror, it never smiles first. The reflection waits on you. And yet so many of us live as if the mirror should change on its own, as if we must wait for the world to shift before we allow ourselves to feel peace, love, or freedom. But the mirror of life is waiting for your frequency. It is waiting for the tone you choose to broadcast through your thoughts, your emotions, and your state of being. The 1%, the small group who awaken to this truth, know something the rest of the world overlooks. They know that transformation is not about forcing outcomes. It is not about straining and struggling to bend life into shape. Transformation happens when we align with what is already here. Just as a radio doesn't create the music but simply tunes into it, your consciousness tunes into realities that already exist. The version of life you long for is not hiding in a distant future. It is broadcasting now, waiting for you to adjust your inner dial. And this is where the most profound shift occurs. Surrender. Not the kind of surrender that means giving up, but the conscious surrender of releasing control and allowing life to flow through you. The ego whispers that if you loosen your grip, everything will fall apart. But nature shows us a different story. The flower doesn't wrestle itself into bloom. The river doesn't struggle to find the ocean. The bird doesn't argue with the wind that carries it. Their strength lies in their harmony with life's rhythm. And when you stop fighting against the current, your own path becomes as effortless as breathing. Each breath you take is more powerful than you realize. In every moment, you are making a choice, a vote for the kind of reality you wish to live. There is no neutral ground. Either you are reinforcing the old patterns of fear and limitation, or you are stepping into a new field of possibility. Most people are unaware they are voting at all, and so they unconsciously recycle the same struggles. But you, right now, can choose differently. Now, many expect this kind of alignment to arrive with fireworks, with dramatic signs that cannot be missed. But the deepest shifts often happen quietly in the space between one breath and the next. In the silence before sleep, in the stillness of an early morning. Transformation is rarely loud. It is subtle, delicate, like the gentle turn of a tide. And because it is subtle, most miss it. They keep searching for the extraordinary while overlooking the miracle in the ordinary whiles. When you choose presence instead of pressure, when you soften into trust instead of control, something extraordinary unfolds. Life reorganizes itself around your new state of being, not because you forced it to, but because you stopped interfering with the natural responsiveness of the universe. The field of reality is always listening, always echoing back the song of your vibration. Change your song, and the entire landscape around you shifts. But here's where the true difference lies. Information is not enough. Reading about these ideas, understanding them intellectually, that alone does not create transformation. Many have shelves full of books and minds full of theories, yet their lives remain unchanged. Why? Because transformation is not a concept, it is a state of embodiment. The 1% are those who choose, moment by moment, to live this truth, not just think about it. They choose peace when panic tempts them. They choose trust when fear pulls at them. They choose presence when the world demands urgency. And those small, quiet choices accumulate into a completely different experience of life. Imagine for a moment that your consciousness is like a garden. If you keep planting seeds of worry, you cannot expect flowers of joy. If you water doubt every day, you cannot harvest peace. But when you tend your inner garden with love, when you nurture gratitude, when you allow space for stillness, your life blossoms in ways that appear miraculous to others. This is not magic. It is alignment. And alignment doesn't mean sitting back and doing nothing. It means allowing your actions to emerge from inspiration instead of desperation, from trust instead of fear. When you are truly aligned, every step feels guided. Every decision flows. Every opportunity arrives with uncanny timing. Life stops feeling like a battle to win and starts feeling like a dance you were born to move with. So here is the invitation to stop waiting for the mirror of reality to smile first. To stop postponing your peace until circumstances improve. To stop searching for transformation somewhere in the future. The shift is already here, already available, already within you. You are the change you've been waiting for. And when more of us remember this, the whole field of human consciousness rises. The world itself begins to reflect higher frequencies of love, creativity, and connection. Your personal awakening is never just personal. It adds to the collective song of humanity. Each choice you make, to align with peace rather than fear, with trust rather than control, contributes to the evolution of consciousness itself. So I ask you now, not as a task, but as a declaration. Choose one word that captures the energy you are ready to embody from this moment forward. One word that signals to the universe that you are stepping into alignment, into trust, into the truth of who you are. Write it. Speak it. Let it land in your heart, because that word becomes your compass. That word becomes your frequency. Remember this: you are not separate from what you seek. You are not waiting for life to give you permission. You are the consciousness through which reality arises, the awareness in which all possibilities exist. And when you live from that knowing, life becomes less about struggle and more about flow, less about effort and more about grace. This is your moment. This is your invitation to stop searching for the path and realize you are the path. 1. Reality is the mirror of consciousness. There is a simple truth that can change everything. If you allow it to sink in, life is a mirror. The world around you does not move first, you do. Just as a mirror never smiles before you smile, reality does not shift before you shift. When I first heard this idea, it felt impossible. I thought, surely life happens to me. Surely circumstances are beyond my reach. But after walking through years of disappointment, fear, and loss, I began to notice a pattern. Whenever I carried resentment inside, I seemed to meet people who would offend me. Whenever I was filled with doubt, opportunities slipped away like water through my fingers. And when, on rare occasions, I allowed myself to rest in gratitude, doors opened, as if the universe itself had been waiting. It was then I realized the world had always been responding. It wasn't punishing me. It wasn't rewarding me. It was simply reflecting me. Think of the mirror again. It doesn't argue. It doesn't correct you. It doesn't choose what to show. It reflects without judgment. If you frown, it frowns. If you smile, it smiles. Life is just as faithful. The vibration you carry, the mixture of thoughts, feelings, and beliefs simmering inside, becomes the reflection you see in the circumstances around you. And here's the part that often goes unnoticed. The reflection doesn't come instantly. Just as the seeds you plant in a garden take time to grow, the inner states you cultivate, eventually bloom into outer experiences. Some call this karma. Some call it cause and effect. But I've come to see it simply as the natural law of reflection. Imagine you are walking down the street carrying a glass of water. Someone bumps into you, and the glass spills. Only what was inside can come out. If you were carrying clear water spills. If you were carrying coffee spills. Life works the same way. Whatever you carry inside, peace or fear, trust or control, openness or resistance, that is what spills into the world when life bumps into you. I've lived long enough to know that pain is real and hardship is unavoidable. This is not about pretending everything is beautiful when it isn't. But even in pain, the mirror shows us something. When we suffer, we are given a chance to see what we're holding. The reflection may sting, but it is never meant to condemn us. It is meant to awaken us. Let me share an image with you. Picture yourself standing before a pond at dawn. The surface is calm, and it reflects the sky perfectly soft light. Gentle clouds, maybe the faint color of sunrise. But if you throw a stone into the pond, the reflection becomes distorted. The sky hasn't changed. The sun hasn't moved. Only the surface ripples. Your consciousness works like that pond. When you are still, reality reflects the deeper truth. When you are restless, anxious, and tangled in thought, the reflection becomes distorted. We mistake the ripples for reality itself, when in truth, they are only the movement of our own mind. This is why spiritual teachers across time, whether they speak of meditation, prayer, or mindfulness, always return to the same message: be still. Not because stillness magically changes the world, but because it allows the reflection to clear. It allows you to see reality as it is, instead of through the waves of your agitation. And here is where it becomes practical. If reality is a mirror, then the question is not, how can I fix the reflection, but what am I broadcasting to be reflected back, instead of fighting with the image in the mirror? You adjust yourself. You soften the frown, and the mirror softens too. You release the tension in your shoulders, and the reflection relaxes. This is why effort and struggle often fail to create lasting change. You cannot force the mirror, but you can transform what stands before it. I've had moments in my life when I tried to control everything: my career, my relationships, even the smallest details of the day. And the more I tried, the tighter the reflection became. The more resistance I met. It was like trying to polish the mirror with dirty hands. But when I began to care for the inner state, when I allowed trust to replace fear, when I chose gratitude, even in small things, I noticed that life softened. Without me forcing it, situations unfolded with more grace. The reflection shifted because I shifted. This does not mean you must be cheerful all the time. It does not mean you should deny sadness, grief, or anger. The mirror does not need perfection. It only needs honesty. If you stand before it in authenticity, acknowledging what is present without clinging to it, the reflection begins to change naturally. Healing does not come from pretending to be light. It comes from meeting your own darkness with compassion. Think again of the pond. Even when ripples distort the surface, in time, the water calms itself. You don't need to force it. Your only task is not to keep throwing stones. And in the same way, your mind does not need to be controlled into stillness. It simply needs space, room to breathe, room to release its grip. This is the power of surrender. When you stop fighting the reflection, when you stop trying to bend life into shape, you begin to see how responsive it already is. You are not separate from what you experience. You are not an observer trapped behind the glass. You are the source of what the mirror reflects. And so the question becomes, what do you want to see? Not in terms of possessions or titles, but in terms of experience. Do you want to see peace? Then cultivate peace within. Do you long for connection? Then soften your heart toward yourself and others. Do you yearn for freedom? Then release the chains of thought that keep you bound. Life is listening. The mirror is faithful. It can only give you what you bring to it. When you grasp this truth not as theory but as lived reality, something extraordinary happens. You stop blaming the mirror. You stop waiting for it to change. And you begin to live with a quiet authority, knowing that the power has always been in your hands. Or more accurately, in your heart. I say this not as someone who figured it out quickly, but as someone who spent years staring into reflections of struggle and wondering why nothing shifted. I had to walk through the dark before I saw the simplicity of the light. And now, when I see the mirror of life showing me something uncomfortable, I pause. I ask, what in me is being reflected here? Not to judge myself, but to remember that the mirror is my ally. So when you wake tomorrow and the world greets you, remember you are looking into your own reflection. The faces you see, the challenges you meet, the opportunities that arise, they are all responses to the frequency you hold. Treat your inner state as carefully as you would tend a flame on a cold night, for it lights the reflection of your world. Reality is the mirror of consciousness, and when you understand this deeply, when you live it moment by moment, the world around you becomes less of a battlefield and more of a canvas. And you, dear soul, are the artist, too. The ability to synchronize with realities that already exist. There is a quiet truth about life that few ever discover. You don't have to create what you desire from scratch. What you seek is not hiding somewhere in the future, waiting to be invented. It already exists. It is alive, vibrant, and available in the field of possibilities that surrounds you right now. The work is not to make it appear, but to align yourself with it like tuning a radio, until the static clears and the music becomes unmistakable. For years, I believed the opposite. I thought I had to build everything step by step with sweat and effort, that I had to climb a mountain before I could rest. Life felt like a relentless construction project, with me hauling bricks day and night. But the harder I pushed, the heavier it became. It was only when I began to soften, to question the struggle itself, that I realized the station had always been broadcasting. The music was there all along. I just wasn't tuned in. Think of an old radio with a dial. When it's not aligned, all you hear is noise static, crackling, fragments of melody that never fully form, but the broadcast is constant. The orchestra is playing whether you hear it or not. The moment you turn the dial just slightly, the sound becomes clear. And what once felt absent is suddenly present. That is what it means to synchronize with reality. You don't force it into being. You meet it where it already is. And here's the beautiful part. Life has more stations than we've been told. There isn't just one channel of survival, one channel of struggle, one channel of limitation. There are infinite frequencies of peace, of abundance, of love, of creativity. And every single one of them is already broadcasting. I remember a season of my life when all I could hear was static. I woke each morning with the weight of dread, convinced that nothing would change. I carried scarcity in my body like a second skin. And of course, all I seemed to meet in the world was more of the same: doors closing, opportunities slipping away, relationships fraying. At the time, I thought life was cruel, but now I understand I was tuned into that frequency. It wasn't punishment, it was reflection. And then one day, almost by accident, I let gratitude enter. It wasn't grand, it wasn't fireworks. It was something as simple as a sunrise through the window, a warm cup of tea in my hands. For the first time in weeks, I allowed myself to feel it, to let that small moment be enough. And something shifted. The static softened. A faint melody came through. Within weeks, conversations opened that led to new opportunities. Within months, I felt lighter. I hadn't built a new life brick by brick. I had tuned into a new station. This is not about pretending you're happy when you're not, or forcing positivity like a mask. Synchronizing with a reality that already exists is about resonance. When you hum a note in a quiet room, and a string on a guitar across the space vibrates in response, that is resonance. The string wasn't touched. It simply responded because it shared the same frequency. In the same way, when your inner state vibrates with trust, with peace, with openness, the field of reality responds. It cannot help but echo back. The challenge is that most of us are conditioned to believe we must do more, push harder, or earn our way into a better experience. But creation doesn't respond to strain, it responds to frequency. You cannot demand music from the radio by shouting at it. You cannot make the orchestra play louder by banging on the speakers. You simply tune in. You allow the signal to come through. And here's the paradox. This kind of alignment often feels too simple for the mind. We are so used to effort that we distrust ease. We think, surely it can't be this gentle. Surely it can't be this natural. But life is full of evidence that alignment is effortless once it's found. A bird does not build the wind, yet it soars on its currents. A river does not manufacture gravity, yet it flows faithfully to the ocean. They do not create the forces, they align with them. And in that alignment, they find strength beyond their own. When you begin to live this way, you notice subtle shifts first. The conversations around you feel lighter. The synchronicities multiply, meeting someone at just the right moment, finding the exact words you needed to hear, stumbling on opportunities that feel designed for you. Skeptics call it coincidence, but once you've experienced it repeatedly, you recognize it as the echo of resonance. It is the field of reality rearranging itself to match your inner state. Let me be honest. This does not mean challenges vanish. Storms will still come, loss will still visit, pain is part of the human journey. But even in those seasons, when you learn to tune your awareness, the storms no longer drown you. You find the frequency of peace in the middle of chaos, the station of trust in the middle of uncertainty, and from that alignment, you experience the same storm differently. What once felt like destruction becomes transformation. What once felt like an ending becomes a doorway. Synchronizing with existing realities also requires humility. The mind wants to control how things unfold, but alignment often surprises us. The life you long for may arrive in ways you didn't imagine. The relationship you seek may come through an unexpected encounter. The abundance you desire may show up in forms that don't match your plan, but exceed your imagination. To live this way is to let go of insisting on the how, and instead anchor yourself in the frequency. And here is the heart of it. You don't have to strain to become someone you're not. The version of you that belongs to the reality you want already exists. Just as the music is already playing, that self is already alive in the field. You're not constructing them from scratch. You are remembering, reconnecting, aligning. So if you feel lost in static right now, if life seems filled with noise and confusion, take heart. The music is still playing. It has never stopped. You don't need to shout to hear it. You don't need to demand it appear. You need only to turn the dial of your awareness, gently, consistently, patiently, until the signal clears. And when it does, when the melody comes through, it won't feel foreign. It will feel like home. Because deep down, it was always your song. 3. The secret of surrender. There is a fear that lives quietly in most of us. The belief that if we loosen our grip, everything will fall apart. The ego whispers, if you stop controlling, nothing will happen. If you stop pushing, life will pass you by. If you let go, you will lose everything. And so, we tighten our fists, clench our shoulders, and strain against the flow of existence. We live as if holding the wheel tighter will somehow stop the storms. But here is the secret I had to learn through my own stumbling. Surrender is not the same as defeat. Letting go is not the same as giving up. True surrender is entering the deeper rhythm of life, where events unfold with a wisdom far greater than the plans I once thought I had to control. Think of a flower in spring. It does not schedule its blooming. It does not calculate the exact moment to unfold. It responds naturally to the warmth of the sun, the richness of the soil, the invitation of the season. Its blooming is not forced, it is allowed. In the same way, surrender is allowing life to move through you, trusting that you are already part of an intelligent pattern that knows how to carry you forward. I used to live like a soldier in battle. Every day felt like strategy and struggle. I mapped out my goals, drew up my plans, and fought against the circumstances that didn't match them. For a while, this gave me a sense of control, but beneath it was exhaustion. Life became an endless negotiation with reality, me, demanding reality, resisting, and no matter how hard I tried, the victories were hollow, because they came with a constant fear of loss. It was only when I broke, when the weight became unbearable, that I discovered surrender, not as an idea, but as a lived necessity. I remember sitting in silence one night, my plans in ruins, my strength gone, and I whispered words I never thought I would. I can't do this anymore. In that admission, something softened. For the first time, I stopped fighting the current. I let it carry me. And what surprised me was not collapse, but support. Life did not abandon me in that moment. Instead, I felt held. The right people appeared. Unexpected doors opened. A gentle order began to reveal itself, where I had seen only chaos. It was as if the river had been waiting all along for me to stop swimming upstream. That is the paradox of surrender. The ego believes it is the end of action, but in truth, it is the beginning of effortless action. When you align with the rhythm of life, your steps become lighter, your choices become clearer, and your actions carry more power because they are supported by the whole. It's not that you stop living, it's that you start living in harmony. Look at the river. It doesn't force its way to the ocean, and yet it always arrives. The bends, the rocks, the waterfalls, they are part of its journey, not obstacles. The river trusts gravity, trusts the path carved before it, and because of that trust, its movement is both strong and graceful. When you surrender, you live like that river, moving with a force greater than your own, and yet never losing your direction. Now, surrender does not mean passivity. It doesn't mean sitting idle and expecting life to deliver everything to your doorstep. A flower still turns toward the sun. A river still moves forward. Surrender means you stop resisting the current that already wants to carry you where you belong. You still act, but your actions arise from trust instead of fear, from clarity instead of panic. I have learned that when I force outcomes, I often block the very things I long for. My limited perspective tries to dictate how things should happen, but life sees a bigger picture. When I release my grip on the how, I allow the universe to surprise me with ways far more elegant than I could imagine. Opportunities appear that my mind never planned. Solutions unfold that no amount of control could have produced. Surrender is not the abandonment of your dreams. It is the deeper trust that what is meant for you will find you when you stop standing in the way. It is releasing the belief that your worth depends on constant effort. It is remembering that you are not separate from the intelligence of creation. You are woven into it. And here is the hardest truth: surrender often begins in the dark. It begins when the plans fail, when the path collapses, when you realize that control is an illusion. In those moments, surrender feels like the last option. But over time, it becomes the first instinct. You learn that what you once feared, the letting go, was in fact the doorway to peace. So how do you practice surrender in daily life? You begin with the small things. Notice where you are straining, gripping tightly to an outcome, worrying about a future you cannot control. replaying a conversation in your head. In those moments, take a breath, relax your shoulders, remind yourself, life is moving with me, not against me. Then allow yourself to loosen the grip just slightly. That small act is surrender. And as you practice, you will see that surrender is not weakness. It is strength of the most profound kind. It takes courage to stop fighting. It takes wisdom to trust the unseen. It takes humility to admit that the river knows better than the stone. But when you do, you find a freedom no amount of control can offer. I look back on my darkest nights now and see them differently. They were not punishments. They were invitations to surrender. They were cracks in my armor where the light could enter. And in that light, I discovered that surrender was never about losing. It was about gaining access to the life that had been waiting for me all along. So I say to you now, let yourself soften. Let yourself trust. Let the river carry you. Your life is not falling apart. It is falling into place. The bloom has always been inside you, waiting for the warmth of surrender to open it. The secret of surrender is simple, but it is not easy. Yet once you test it, once you live even a moment in its embrace, you will never forget the freedom it brings. It is the freedom of realizing you were never meant to control every detail. You were meant to flow with the intelligence of life itself. And in that flow, you discover what the ego never tells you. Surrender is not the end. It is the beginning. For the power of choice in every moment life is not a single, fixed path. It is not a rigid destiny carved in stone. Life is more like an ocean vast, fluid, ever shifting, and every choice you make is like dipping an oar into the water, steering yourself gently toward one current or another. You may not control the entire sea, but you always hold the oar. That is the power many of us forget, the quiet but steady power of choice in every breath, every thought, every feeling. Most people imagine choices only in terms of grand decisions, moving to a new city, changing careers, ending or beginning a relationship. But the truth is far simpler and far more intimate. Every moment is a crossroads. Each thought you entertain is a seed. Each word you speak is a brushstroke. Each emotion you allow is a note in the song of your life. There are no neutral moments. You are always voting for limitation or for freedom, for fear or for love, for the past or for the possibility of a new timeline. When I look back on my own journey, I see how often I dismissed the small choices. I told myself, this thought doesn't matter. This reaction is too small to change anything. I'll deal with it later. But the truth is, later never comes. The life we live is built not on occasional big leaps, but on countless small steps. The thought you choose right now shapes the tone of the next. The emotion you allow right now sets the vibration of what meets you tomorrow. Like drops of water carving stone, the choices you make, moment by moment, shape the landscape of your reality. Think of it this way: each breath is a brush in your hand, and your life is the canvas. You can choose to paint shadows or light. With every inhale and exhale, you decide whether to deepen the old patterns or to open space for something new. Even silence is not neutral. It is either a silence heavy with resistance or a silence alive with presence. Here is what I have learned. The greatest freedom you have is not in controlling circumstances, but in choosing your response to them. The world may bring storms, but in each gust of wind, you can choose whether to stiffen with fear or to dance with resilience. Someone may speak words that wound, but you can choose whether to carry them like chains or to let them fall to the ground. You cannot control the outer waves, but you can always choose the direction of your inner sail. For many years, I lived as if my emotions were accidents. Anger appeared, and I let it run wild. Fear whispered, and I treated it as truth. Doubt arose, and I bowed to it. I thought I had no say in these visitors. But one day, in a moment of deep stillness, I realized something astonishing: emotions may knock at the door, but I choose whether to invite them in for tea. That was the beginning of my freedom. This does not mean you deny what arises. Pain will still come. Fear will still visit. But choice means you recognize them for what they are: passing guests, not permanent rulers. You can acknowledge the fear, breathe with it, and still choose love. You can honor the pain, listen to its message, and still choose healing. The choice is not about denying reality, but about shaping it through the vibration you hold. Let me give you a simple image. Imagine two radio stations. One broadcasts static and noise. The other plays music that soothes your soul. Both signals are in the air right now. Which one you hear depends only on the station you tune to. Your mind and heart are like the tuner. Every thought, every feeling is a subtle adjustment of the dial. You can stay tuned to fear and replay the static of old wounds. Or you can shift sometimes just a little to the frequency of love, gratitude, or possibility. That shift is choice. And that choice changes everything. When you begin to live with awareness of choice, life transforms. You stop being a victim of automatic reactions and start becoming a conscious creator of your reality. Instead of saying, "This is just who I am," you realize, "This is who I have chosen to be so far, and I can choose differently now." Instead of saying, "This is just how the world is," you remember, "The world I see reflects the vibration I bring to it." Choice is power. It is subtle, quiet, often overlooked, but it is the very power that determines which timeline you walk into. And the beauty is that you do not need to wait for tomorrow to use it. In this moment, right now, you can choose a softer thought. You can choose a deeper breath. You can choose to place your hand on your heart and whisper, "I am safe." These choices ripple outward, and soon, what was once a small shift becomes a new reality. Sometimes people ask me, "But what if I've been making the wrong choices for years? Isn't it too late?" And I smile, because the answer is always no. It is never too late. Choice is not something you accumulate. It is something you renew. The moment you remember your power, you are already standing in a new field of possibility. You do not need to erase the past to create the future. You simply need to choose differently now. I remember a time when I was drowning in regret. My mind replayed every mistake, every misstep, every door I didn't walk through. I thought I was trapped by those choices, sentenced to repeat them forever. But then I realized regret is itself a choice. By feeding it, I was voting for the same timeline again and again. When I chose instead to forgive myself, to bless the past and release it, I felt the weight lift. That single choice opened a new path under my feet. So let me say this clearly. No moment is wasted. Because every moment is a doorway. You are never locked in. You are never powerless. Even now, as you listen to these words, you are choosing how they land in you. You are choosing whether to dismiss them as just another idea or to allow them to awaken something deeper. That choice is yours. And it carries more power than you realize. The world will tell you that power lies in wealth, in status, in control. But I tell you this, your truest power lies in the space between stimulus and response. In that tiny, sacred space, you decide who you will be. That is the power of choice. And it is the power that shapes worlds. So as you move through your day, remember, each breath is a brushstroke, each thought a vote, each feeling a doorway. Do not underestimate the small moments. They are the threads that weave your destiny. And when you choose love, when you choose presence, when you choose to align with your higher self, you are not just changing your life. You are shifting the fabric of reality itself. This is the gift and the responsibility of being alive. You are not a passenger. You are a participant. And in each moment, you hold the power to turn the page and step into a new chapter. 5. Living from presence instead of effort. From the time we were children, most of us were taught a simple formula. If you want something, You must fight for it. If you want to change your life, you must work harder, push harder, struggle more. The story of effort was woven into our schools, our families, our culture so deeply that we rarely stop to question it. We came to believe that transformation only comes with strain, that growth is earned through exhaustion. But here is the gentle truth I discovered. Real transformation does not happen in struggle. It happens in stillness. The most profound changes often arrive not in the noise of effort, but in the silence of presence. Think of the pause between two breaths. In that tiny moment, you are not inhaling. You are not exhaling. You are simply being. That pause is not empty. It is alive. It holds the quiet power of renewal. In the same way, when you stop forcing life to bend to your will, when you stop carrying the heavy weight of, "I must make this happen," something extraordinary opens. You become available to the intelligence of the present moment. And in that availability, new energy enters. For a long time, I misunderstood what strength meant. I thought strength was measured by how much I could carry, how much pain I could endure, how many hours I could work. I believed that if I stopped pushing, everything would collapse. But life taught me differently. When I burned out, when I was stripped of my endless effort, I had no choice but to sit in stillness. And it was there, in that quiet, unwanted pause, that I discovered a strength deeper than effort, the strength of presence. Presence is not passive. It is not a lazy drifting through life. Presence is the willingness to meet each moment as it is, without overlaying it with the weight of past regrets or the pressure of future fears. When you are present, you are not adding tension. You are listening. You are attuning yourself to the rhythm of life as it unfolds now. And in that listening, in that attunement, a new kind of guidance arises. Imagine trying to hear a soft melody in a crowded room full of shouting voices. No matter how you strain, you cannot hear it. But when the room falls silent, the melody reveals itself naturally. That is what presence does. It quiets the noise of effort, so that the subtle wisdom of life can be heard. I used to think that if I wasn't striving, I was doing nothing. But the truth is, presence is the most powerful form of action. When you are present, your actions are no longer scattered by anxiety or driven by fear. They emerge with clarity, like an arrow released from a bow that has been perfectly drawn. A single action from presence carries more weight than 100 actions from struggle. Let me share an image. Picture a butterfly emerging from its cocoon. If it tried to rush the process, if it forced its wings open too soon, it would never gain the strength needed to fly. But in the natural timing of presence, the transformation happens with grace. The butterfly does not strive, it allows. And in that allowing, it fulfills its destiny. We, too, are meant to live this way. Presence is not about doing nothing. It is about doing from a place of alignment. When you are present, even the simplest act, drinking water, listening to a friend, walking down the street, becomes infused with meaning. You are no longer missing your life by chasing the next thing. You are inhabiting your life as it is right here. And in that inhabiting, change begins to unfold organically. For many years, I prayed for change. I begged for transformation. I worked tirelessly to become better. But the breakthroughs did not come through my effort. They came in the quiet moments when I stopped, when I surrendered the fight. Even for a breath, light entered. In silence, the old layers peeled away on their own. In presence, I remembered what effort had made me forget. I am already whole. This does not mean you abandon responsibility. It means you learn to act from a different foundation. Instead of acting from fear of lack, you act from the fullness of presence. Instead of running from who you are, you act from the groundedness of being. When you live this way, your outer life begins to shift, not because you forced it, but because you aligned with it. Consider water flowing down a mountain. It doesn't force itself to find the path. It simply follows the contours, present to every turn, every rock, every slope. And yet, with no strain, it shapes valleys. It nourishes forests. It carves rivers. Water teaches us this presence is not weak. Presence reshapes the world in ways effort alone never could. So how do we cultivate presence in a life built on effort? We begin in small ways. Take a moment to notice your breath. Feel your feet against the floor. Listen fully to the sound of the room around you. These simple practices remind you that the present moment is not a barrier to where you want to go. It is the only place where transformation can happen. The mind will protest. It will whisper, "This is too slow. You must keep pushing. You are falling behind." But over time, you will see that presence is not slow. Presence is timeless. In presence, you step out of the race, and you realize there was never anything to catch. Life was always here, waiting for you to join it. When you live from presence, your heart softens. You stop demanding that life fit your rigid plans, and you begin to receive what life has been offering all along. You taste peace, not as a faraway goal, but as the air you breathe right now. And in that peace, the changes you once chased begin to unfold naturally. I look back on my years of effort with compassion. I understand why I believed struggle was the path, but I also see now how much I missed moments of beauty, moments of connection, moments of grace that were always here, hidden behind the fog of striving. Presence cleared that fog. It revealed that life is not waiting for me at the finish line. Life is here. In this breath, in this step, in this moment. So if you hear anything today, let it be this. You do not need to fight to become who you are. You only need to be present enough to remember it. Transformation is not forced. It is allowed. And when you live from presence, you discover a freedom effort could never give you the freedom of being fully alive. Right now. 6. The difference of the 1%. Across the world, millions of people are searching. They read books, attend workshops, watch videos, listen to teachers. They gather concepts and collect knowledge like seashells on a beach. And yet, for most, the shells remain empty. They hold the words, but not the living breath of the truth. This is not judgment. It is the natural stage of awakening. We all begin here. Collecting, we fill our minds with ideas. We underline passages. We repeat affirmations. It is the necessary soil, but it is not yet the seed in bloom. For the vast majority, the journey stops at the surface. They know the words, but they do not yet embody the vibration behind the words. But then there are the few, the quiet, rare few, perhaps only 1%. These are not the people who necessarily read more, or speak louder, or know more theories. These are the ones who dare to live the truth, not just think it. They are the ones who let the teachings leave the page and enter their breath, their choices, their presence. What makes this 1% different? It is not brilliance or luck. It is not privilege or special favor. The difference lies in a single, profound decision to embody, rather than to merely understand. They choose to trust rather than to control. They choose peace rather than tension. They choose presence rather than distraction. And in those choices repeated, lived, breathed their entire lives, shift to a different frequency. I remember when I first realized this distinction. I had been a collector of wisdom for years. My shelves overflowed with books. My notebooks were filled with quotes. I could speak eloquently about concepts of consciousness and transformation. But in my private moments, I was still restless, still anxious, still trying to control everything around me. I knew the map, but I had never stepped fully onto the path. Then life gave me a moment I could not bypass. My plans fell apart. My strategies failed. The knowledge I had stored like treasure could not save me from the raw experience of my own heart breaking. In that moment, words on a page were not enough. I had to decide, would I embody the trust I had spoken about? Would I surrender control? Even now, would I choose peace? Even in chaos, that decision changed everything. It was not dramatic on the outside. I did not announce it. But within, something shifted. For the first time, I stopped clinging to the idea of truth and allowed it to move through me as living reality. I discovered that knowledge held in the mind creates weight, but knowledge lived in the body creates freedom. This is what the 1% no transformation is not about adding more concepts. It is about allowing even one simple truth to saturate your being until it becomes natural. It is like water seeping into the earth, slow, steady, invisible, and then one day, a flower appears. Not because you read about flowers, but because you became the soil where one could grow. You can feel the difference when you meet someone from this 1%. They do not need to convince you with arguments or overwhelm you with information. Their presence itself speaks. You feel calmer in their company. Not because they told you to be calm, but because they are calm. You feel safer. Not because they promised safety, but because their being radiates trust. They have stopped trying to control life. And in their surrender, life flows through them like a clear stream. Most people search for extraordinary techniques, but the 1% know that truth is simple. To breathe fully, to release tension, to trust the moment, to choose peace over fear. These are not complicated acts, but they are revolutionary when lived consistently. They open doors that endless striving never could. The difference of the 1% is that they cross the threshold from knowing to being. It is the same difference as reading about swimming versus entering the water. You can memorize every stroke, study every diagram, but until you step into the pool, you do not truly know the freedom of floating. The 1% step into the water, and because they do, they discover currents that the rest only imagine. Here is the quiet secret. This 1% is not meant to remain 1%. The door is open to everyone, but few walk through. Not because they cannot, but because they hesitate at the threshold. The mind clings to control. The ego resists trust. The nervous system clings to old tension, and so they stay at the edge, collecting concepts, afraid to take the leap into embodiment. But the leap is not as far as it seems. It does not require perfection. It requires willingness. It requires one choice at a time. When fear arises, choose to breathe instead of tighten. When doubt whispers, choose trust instead of control. When chaos swirls, choose presence instead of panic. These choices are the bricks of embodiment, and over time, they build a life lived in a new frequency. I am not speaking of an unreachable ideal. I am speaking of simple, daily acts of living. The 1% still face challenges, still feel pain, still walk through storms. But the difference is in how they meet them. They do not collapse into fear as quickly. They do not cling to control as desperately. They move with a rhythm that feels more like dancing than like fighting. And that rhythm opens them to a flow of grace most never touch. When you look around at the world, it may seem as though 1% is too small to matter. But light does not need numbers to transform darkness. A single candle changes the entire room. A single person, living truth, can ripple through families, communities, generations. The 1% live not to separate themselves, but to serve as living reminders of what is possible. And perhaps, if you are still listening, you are already among them, or standing at the threshold, ready to join. Remember this: it is not about perfection. It is about choice. It is about daring to live what you already know in your heart. It is about becoming the frequency you once only imagined. So the question is not whether you have read enough, studied enough, or prepared enough. The question is, will you live it now? Will you step into the embodiment of trust? of peace, of presence. That single decision places you in the 1%, not as a special elite, but as a living expression of truth. And once you live it, even in small ways, you will see what I saw. The difference of the 1% is not about separation, but about liberation. It is not about being better than others, but about becoming fully yourself. It is the difference between theory and reality, between effort and flow, between collecting truth and becoming truth. The miracle of now. You do not need to wait for the perfect moment. You do not need to wait for more knowledge, more signs, or more preparation. The miracle is not hiding in some distant future. It is alive in this breath, right here, right now. The shift you have longed for, the freedom you have searched for, is not something you need to chase. It is not somewhere out there. It is here, in this moment, waiting for you to recognize it. The question is not whether the miracle exists, but whether you will allow yourself to live it now. So many of us postpone our freedom. We say, one day, when I have enough money, when I have the right relationship, when the world is calmer, then I will feel peace. Then I will allow joy. But life is never postponed. Life is happening here. And the key has always been this: the frequency you embody now is the life you walk into tomorrow. Think of a musician tuning their instrument. They do not wait for the performance to begin to tune. They tune first, here, in the present moment. And once the instrument is aligned, the music flows effortlessly. In the same way, your consciousness is the instrument of your reality. When you tune it now by choosing peace, by choosing presence, by choosing love, you begin to play the music of a new life without waiting for the future to grant permission. The world around us is longing for this shift. It is not only personal, it is collective. Every time you choose trust over control, calm over tension, love over fear, you do more than transform your own life. You contribute to the rising vibration of humanity. One choice ripples outward. One heart in alignment touches countless others, often in ways unseen. It may feel small. It may feel like your quiet decision cannot matter. But just as a single drop creates ripples across a vast pond, your presence is never insignificant. When enough of us begin to embody this frequency, something extraordinary happens. We weave a new fabric of reality. We open the door to a world where connection replaces division, where creativity replaces fear, where love is no longer an exception, but the ground of being. This is not a dream. It is a possibility already alive within the field of consciousness. And it begins with you, not tomorrow, not someday, now. So let this moment be your threshold. You have walked through ideas, through images, through truths whispered into your heart. Now the invitation is simple. Choose to live it. Choose to embody it. Choose to become the frequency you once believed you were searching for. And to anchor this choice, let it be more than a thought. Let it be a declaration. A single word, spoken or written, carries power. It is more than a comment on a screen. It is a signal sent into the quantum field, affirming who you choose to be. When you leave a single word, you are not only telling me, you are telling life itself. This is the energy I align with. This is the song I am ready to sing. Perhaps your word is peace. Perhaps it is trust. Perhaps it is love. It does not matter what word you choose. What matters is that it comes from your heart, and that it becomes the seed you plant into this present moment. Because the present moment is fertile soil, and whatever you plant here will grow. So take a breath. Place your hand gently on your heart. Feel the rhythm of life pulsing through you. And ask yourself, what is the energy I choose to walk with from this day forward? Then, let that word arise. Simple and clear. That word is not just for you. It is your contribution to the field of life we all share. Remember this. You do not need to search endlessly. You do not need to wander for decades. The truth you are seeking is not separate from you. You are it. You always have been. I speak these words not as an idea, but as someone who once searched and searched until the searching itself exhausted me. Only then did I realize the treasure I was chasing was the one holding the map. The peace I was seeking was the one who was searching. The love I longed for was never absent. It was buried beneath the noise of my own striving. And when I stopped, when I became present, when I allowed myself to embody what I already knew, deep inside, that is when I remembered, I am what I was looking for. And so are you. This is the gift. And it is also the challenge. Because once you realize you are what you seek, there are no more excuses. There is no more postponing. You are called to live it, here and now. And that call is the most beautiful invitation life can offer. So let this be your moment of remembering. Let this be the moment you step into the 1%, not as someone separate, not as someone superior, but as someone willing to live truth instead of just speaking it. The world does not need more concepts. It needs living examples. It needs you, awake and present. And when enough of us choose this way, when enough of us choose to embody peace, trust, and love in the present moment, we will witness a shift far greater than any of us could imagine alone. We will see a world transformed, not through struggle, but through the gentle power of presence. You do not need to wait. You do not need to search. You do not need to become anything other than what you already are. The miracle is here. The truth is here. And the truth is you. So let your word be spoken. Let your frequency be chosen. And let us walk together into this new reality. Not someday, but now,